we started this path of linking our energies and getting information with the great masters of the moon race in a site, in an ancient site of power of the Muj people in the northern part of the American continent, in a place that is known secretly as Hot Moon. But now we are in a very different atmosphere. We are in the tropical weather in the region of the center of America. And I wanted to share with you the reason of being here, and also give you some insight of how the Moon race transitioned into the Atlantis race, and how there were great masters of the Moon race that were in charge of transmitting their knowledge, their wisdom to those who were seekers of the new race that was the Atlantis race. So how to do that? Let's come back and recapitulate a little bit. We have been sharing in this set of videos the experiences that we received of the race Mu, also known as Lemurian. And we said how when the human experience was conceived in the planet, there were star seeds, consciousness that decided to come down to inhabit and expand the consciousness into a new and more big dimension. This is a third dimension, and how these star travelers, how the seeds come in from the stars, from the center of the Creator One in the universe, decided to detach themselves from the center and go as far as they could down into the more material and gross aspects of the creation. It's like sending somebody to the boundaries of a kingdom to make the kingdom expand into new realms. So these sparks of the Creator that decided to come down into the most distant realms of this huge kingdom had to come into matter, and that by itself, fusing the pure spirit with the pure matter and giving it consciousness, it was a huge experiment by itself. And we discussed how in the first two rounds, the first two races, these sparks that came down from higher levels of consciousness, higher dimensions, down into matter, were stuck at the astral level. They couldn't come down into matter in the first and second race. So they were more subtle beings. They were not inhabiting the gross matter. But in these two races, they were inhabiting another realm that is a little bit more subtle than ours, the physical plane, but that they're in a way superimposed. And they became great masters of the astral plane, okay? But they were not existing in this place that we share now. So the first and second race became great masters of the astral waters. And finally, the third race, that it's known as Lemurian, but we know it's really Muj, had these three components that were in complete equilibrium. They were the M for matter, so they could anchor themselves in the matter. They were the H for the spirit, the traveler that was coming down, and there was the U for the fusion of both, that is represented by the new technology that was developed, that was the soul. So the soul allowed matter and spirit to fuse and to develop consciousness. Consciousness equals soul, in the sense that a spirit fused with the matter created the soul, which is this mechanism that could allow a self-conscious experience in the physical realm. So with this technology, and this is 18 million years ago, the race Mu started inhabiting this physical plane, and through another 9 million years, they perfected the form. In the beginning, they were big giants and cyclopean beings and all the great architects of the universe that were allocated to work here in the human experience were actively working to help develop new forms that were more adequate. And this is where the story of the great giants from all the traditions appear, with these histories of beings that were a little bit similar, but they were not completely human as we know today, and they didn't have all this very complex body that allows us a multi-dimension experience, no? When well attuned. And this is also told, coming back in the ancient tradition of this region, in the Popol Vuh. And the story tells us how the creator practiced first with two races that could not come into physical realm, and also told us about the giants and how the giants appear as an intermediate way to then give place to this physical form of the human beings. So 9 millions of years of evolution and trials and going deeper in perfection in the matter so that the human experience can give the most of itself. And then when this triangle of Mu was prepared, when the equilibrium between the spirit, matter, and soul was perfect, then we could give the next step. And this was a very difficult point, because it's the point where you put a new ingredient in the cake that you are preparing that can eventually, if it's not properly, can spoil everything. And this point was 9 million years ago, when the race Mu integrated the new technology, the technology of the mind. Okay? And this was a moment where everybody in the different realms was contributing their little part so that this new technology could be incorporated without breaking the human experience or the consciousness experience on Earth. We were not yet human. So this was a moment where the principle of mind, manas, was incorporated as a fourth principle over the triangle of Mu. This is a moment where the square is formed with the 3 plus 1. This was a moment where manas was incorporated to Mu, that then started to function from the mind. Mu was functioning in the heart. They inverted their functioning to mind. They converted the same in Hum, from Mu to Hum, and the Hum, which we are now working from the higher centers, developed the brain to be inhabited by the principle of mind, manas, and then the Hum became Hum manas. And this is where the culmination of the Mu race took place, and then started the seeds of the new race. And this new race is the Tlh that we know up today as Atlantic race. This is the race that came to our knowledge through Plato, who received this information from their guardians, the ancient priests from the mystery schools along the river Nile. Plato received this information that there had been an ancient race, Atlantis, that was a huge a huge continent, but had its epicenter in the region of what we know now of Atlantic Ocean, which had, it was not just ocean, there were continents, there were huge platforms of land that now are sent under the water, but eventually will emerge. Remember that we are speaking about millions of years, and the Earth has its own evolution, and there are platforms and there are continents that arise and then come back to sink under the sea. So we come back to the Moor race. They achieve their maximum point of evolution meant and conceived for that race, that is the appearance of the humanus, of the human being, that is 9 million years ago. And from then, in the culprit, in the higher side of their experience, they needed to start regressing, okay? Because they needed to give place to the new race that would be mostly mind oriented. So the more, remember that they were oriented from the heart and the sense of unity. The goal was now to achieve a sense of individuality and to start working from the mind, so that the higher part of the human body, including the mind, the brain, could be developed. And this was meant in a new race that was the Tlha race, the Atlantean race. And there was a moment around 3 to 4 million years ago where this Moor race, that has already been limited and circumscribed by cataclysms, and many of them had perished. There was a nucleus, central nucleus of Moor, that were a minority in the planet, but that were the ones in charge of preserving the wisdom. And then there was this incipient race, new race that was appearing, the Tlhan, the Atlantic race, and the Atlantean soon, because they were very developed in mind and had technologies, and they were mentored by the Syrian beings. Remember that the Moor were mentored by the Pleiadian, and the maternal aspect of the star beings, and the Atlantean race, they were mentored by the paternal aspect of the star beings. They were more oriented in the brain, and the Syrian beings gave them a sense of structuring a society. The Moor were mentored by the Pleiadian beings, and they were maternal guided, and they were given the aspects of how to live in unity with the earth, how to, in this oneness of spirit, cultivate the land. They were given from Pleiades instruments to be able to survive in the land physically. So agriculture, even if it came again in the recently, as history teachers and historians and anthropologists will tell us, the first appearance of agriculture in the surface of the earth was with the Moor, as well as some of the animals that live in close contact with the human beings appeared initially in the planet through the Pleiadian guidance. And on the other side, this new race had to be more mental, it had to be father-oriented, it had to be structurating more than and individualizing. And they were mentored by these other guys from the stars coming from Sirius, and from them we received the laws to create a society that could develop in individuality but survive in a collective way. So the Atlantean beings were very mental. They had technology coming directly from the stars to build their society and organize that. And very soon, they were more adequate to inhabit the earth than the Muj. And many of them, in the transition from Muj to race, the main collective of the Atlantean society, in a way, were hostile to the primitive Mu. They saw them as we can now see animals or beings from another kind of evolution, and they circumscribed them to very limited areas of the Pacific Islands, and they took the whole of the planet Earth, no? Based always in the Atlantic Ocean. But this was the mundane beings, both from Mu and from Atlantis. But there are always the initiates, those that are walking the inner path. And the initiates, the shiny beings from the Mu race, were the guardians and had access to all the knowledge that had been achieved through the Mu experience. And they knew that they had to legate these energies, this wisdom, this knowledge to the new race. So those who were searching, the searchers, the inner searchers of the Atlantic race, those who were not fighting for material belongings, those who were not oppressing the previous race, those who were not anchored in material success, but those who were the inner seekers from the Atlantic race, reached to the keepers of knowledge from the new race, knocked at their door and asked, please do help us. Please do assist us in transitioning. And they were guided by the hierarchies of the planet, and they were assisted, and they were helped to facilitate the continuity of the occult wisdom on planet Earth. And the Mu people, the ancient masters from the Mu race, accepted to pass this wisdom that came from the stars to the new incipient race, to the new Atom race. And it happened, all this happened along what we know now called the American continent, mostly in the regions of the coast. So in the Pacific coast of the American continent predominated the anchored energy of the moose. In the Atlantic coast, the eastern coast, predominated the Atlantean energy, but in both sides, both coasts of the American continent, the Muj masters and the Atlantean seekers that then became masters initiated schools, sacred places of knowledge, wisdom, inner light, that are usually marked by an earth phenomenon, a mountain. If there were no mountains, pyramids were built, a sacred river that acts as portal between dimensions. And sacred sites were built in those spots where the telluric energies of the earth allowed for interdimensional portals. And up to now, in these places, there are masters from Muj, masters from Tont, that work together, helping and assisting this new race, our 5th race, to move forward in consciousness. And I'm telling you this because in the north of America, this place is Hat, Atlantan means, remember this, is mostly, Hatum is mostly towards the Atlantic Ocean. Again, it's not on the ocean because the earth has changed a lot, but it is represented by the 3 huge lakes, reservoirs of water, And all the area around these lakes that used to be glacier, and now there are multitudes of small lakes in the region between Canada and United States. This was a territory of Hatum, and in this territory there are sacred enclaves of fusion between Atlantic and Moh-Raes. From Hatum, Hatl is the Atlantic part that comes first, and Hum is the Moh-Raes. So the name Hatum is a combined effort of these two races that is still working together for this, the fifth race that we are now. And they're working with us so that we can have the knowledge and the wisdom and the energies to move forward. In the central, that is in the north, in the central place of America, we are only considering today the eastern coast. We will speak in another chapter of the west and all the points along the great mountains that represent the Pacific side of America. So in the center, there was an epicentric in the Mayan territory. The Mayan did not even exist, but came later. But the Mayan people were mentored by these interdimensional schools that were formed by human Atl, by the phrase Mu, third and Atlantean, fourth race. And there was an epicenter of this that was a city or a place that was called Tulhu. Tulhu was the first part. Remember that this was all the Atlantic part of it. So first come the Atlantic word, Tulhu, for Atlantic. All the words that come from tu, hu, tu, tru, all those sounds that have power sounds without vowels, those are Atlantean. And hum, remember, is every time that you see H-U-M is Mu ancestry. So Tuhum, this is the name of the sacred center, combined effort between Mu and Atlantean in the center of the American continent. And up to now, by karmic resonance, the place is known as Tulum. Tulum was the name in the past. Tulum. This was the place where the great initiates came to reach the energies, both from Atlantean and the Mu beings. And this is why all the Mayan culture that were mentored by this interdimensional effort of Mu and Tulum flourished, because they were priests. Their priests were guided, their initiates were guided by those beings that reach unity of consciousness of the previous races. And then there's a third place in the northern part of in the southern part of the continent that is called Yusht. Yushur. And nowadays, even if the sound is not as perfect, it's represented by the places of Ushuaia. Ushuaia is another site of power of combined Mu and Atlantean experience. So today I'm receiving and channeling this information from the center, from the umbilicus of this line in the eastern coast of America, from the city of Tulum, where still in another dimension, the energies, the centers of powers, the sacred places that are custodian of the knowledge, of the wisdom of Mu and Atlanteans work together to make this knowledge reach our fifth race. So from Tulum, we bring this information to share with you that even if outside there's war, there's incoherence, there's pain, there's suffering, inside in the inner realms, there's a continuity, a continuous effort of beings that achieved unity, of seekers of light, of preservers of the wisdom that are collaborating, even if outside their words and incoherences, inside there's a unity of consciousness that is preserving the knowledge and the flow of energy throughout all the different instances of races on planet Earth. So I share with you these 3 points of power. Myself, I'm working from Hatum in the north, Hatum. I was sent to Tulhum in the center so that I could envision other and bring forward other parts of the information and of the knowledge to share with you. And we will see how this adventure continues and where we are sent to do the work and to channel the energies and to make them available in the form of information to help other seekers walking together in this path of unity. Thank you very much. There's now a lot of noise in the background, so I think it's time to end it here. We will continue closing the experience of Mu that is pending from their northern side of power, where I live and work and have my human experience now in the region of Canada, of Hatum. And this is all for this short experience in the central part of it, of Tulfu. Thank you very much.